professionals. We're back with another Monday episode of the Simply Trade News Roundup, and we're like 3, 4, 5 days out of Thanksgiving. Woo! Hope you guys are excited, getting the food ready, doing all those kind of things if you're celebrating. But there's a few more days to work. So hopefully you're listening to our podcast on your way to work, or you're already sitting in your desk, or you're going to sleep, something like that. Anyways, hi Andy, hi Lalo. Always do this. How are you?
You're fine. Good morning.
Well, yes, my name's Anik, and I'm here in the studio with my two professionals. So we have a few good articles lined up. It'll be a short one because there's not much happening in the trade industry this week somehow. Unless I'm wrong, send it over to me. Send me your biggest news. But we're going to go over 3 news that I found. So the first one, we're talking Los Angeles, Long Beach ports offering $60 million to aid in purchase of zero-emission trucks. We love hearing zero emission. So this seems like a great way to initiate change and climate accountability, right? My question is, does it just seem that way on paper, or do you have some opposing views or details that might go beyond this happening or this article?
Actually, I would say that the zero emissions, what we're talking about there, more than likely is going to be electric trucks and whatnot. From my perspective, this would be an ideal situation for an electric vehicle in that, it's short hauls, it's pulling, things just in a short run. So you don't have the scenario there of having to, long haul pulls with that, which are where EVs are having a problem with the trucking and then having to recharge. So, if it goes down, you're in a short scenario there where you can get it recharged because you don't geographically, you don't have to have it around. So I think that looks good. I'm not sure where that 60 million is coming from. I'm sure the federal government's behind that, but anyway, yeah. So, in theory, I think it sounds fantastic because you've got a lot of vehicles that are pulling the containers around, doing the piggybacks as well with the trailers and putting the containers on them and getting them ready to move out via with trucks or onto the rail or whatever else. So, it makes sense to me as far as that.
Well, I did see that the actual funding is coming from, it's not a government, it's actually user fee based. So they have a fee called this is funny. It's called their Clean Truck Fund Rate. So anyway, whether it's a fee or not, to me, rate sounds like, of course, something they tack on there onto the services that they provide. So in essence, they're self-funding themselves, meaning the transportation, the users of the port or ports. It's 2 ports. Each of them is contributing 30 million each, and I totally agree with what you said, Andy. If there is a use or a use case of green initiatives, it would be in a port. Why? Because it's smaller. No, ports are humongous. I'm not saying smaller, but they're not long haul. Once it gets past the port or the first, the next mile or whatever, and it hits a distribution warehouse or something, that's a different story. But yes, within the port and somewhere, what do they call it? And I forget what that's called. It's anyway, demurrage, drayage. Yeah, drayage. Yeah. So so I feel that is where it at least we can get started on this, right? We just had an episode on Thursday on the green trade. And lots of really good, with Emily Corey. Yeah, it was a lot of great information, but a lot of confusion as well, and as to how do you calculate, and everything is, everybody has their own formulas and everything. All that aside, physically, when you actually get it done, how are you going to get it done? And this makes sense. So
this particular case, to your point, Lalo, it's excellent. What we were talking about, folks, is that people are trying to do this. If you can't do zero emissions, you're trying to do carbon offsets, if you will, I guess is what it's called. So it's like, and all that. And there's different folks of how you could do it, and you calculate it and try and do that from a standpoint. If I'm driving something or I'm doing something that kicks out CO2, then you can do these offsets. Well, in this particular case, in the port, this is really more, in my opinion, an actual application of use where an EV vehicle of some kind is going to be a positive thing. So anyway, good article. I'm glad to see it. I don't, the timeline, we'll see what happens on that, but I think it's good.
Awesome. Yeah. And by the way, that episode was so good. I saw the preview videos. I went into the episode a little bit deeper because it's a topic that I like specifically. And we got such good feedback on LinkedIn and the video. So go check that episode out. It's really good. And she seems like such a knowledgeable.
Oh, and I'm looking forward to some more discussions on that. Like I said, I've always said, I'm for renewable energy, but not at the cost where it's like 3, 4, 5 times more than it should be. And it's like, it needs to be more of a supplement, rather than just complete conversion over to, quote unquote renewables. And that's where I have the issue with this green initiative is that you can't just go from one to the other. There needs to be a transition, and or when renewables are fully self-sufficient, great. Until then, I look at it and go, it ought to be an enhancement, not a complete convert over when it can't handle everything. But okay. Yeah. Anyway.
All right.
What's our next one?
No, you won't like this one, but it's Yellen. Indo-Pacific trade talks need further work. So there was really nothing said. We had talked about this a while back. So I was hoping this would give us some more information. It really didn't, as they seem to need further work, as the description says. They're talking about 3 pillars, which is lovely pillars. It was climate transition, then there was supply chain, and then I am looking through the article, and then it was anti-corruption. So they couldn't figure anything out, but I just want to hear your perspective on this, and I know you have a little bit more detail, so let's get into it.
Well, I'll start off because I don't know too much, and I'll just put in my 2 cents worth. The thing is that so there's 4 pillars in the and Andy pointed this out before we record it. It was the Indo-Pacific IPEC. What was it, Andy?
It's the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. IPEF, yes. So, but there's 4 pillars. They're leaving out trade, the biggest one, I think, because all the other 3 to me are bundled into supply chain anyway, but yet it's split up into 3. So, they're not bundled into supply chain. The way they're addressing it and going about it is through supply chain. So, like tax and anti-corruption through supply chain, clean and energy decarbonization and infrastructure through supply chain, and supply chain, through supply chain. So. Anyway, so my point was more like where did those advances come from? Like you said, and the article says there's still a lot of work to be done, and this was discussed during the APEC conference that they just had last week in San Francisco, where all those countries came together, and for the first time when Biden talked to, I'm not even going to say his name because I'm going to mess it up. But anyway, from China, the prime minister, Xi. Yeah.
That was worth 5 cents. That was worth 5 cents, not 2 cents, Lalo. Just letting you know. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, here's the thing. All right. So for those who were, Secretary Yellen was talking about, they're trying to work out some kind of again, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. It's a scenario there of group of countries in the Indo-Pacific region trying to work out a, trade deals, what it boils down to. With that, just real quick, you've got Australia, Brunei, Darussalam, I guess, forgive my ignorance on that one, Fiji, India, Indonesia, Japan, the Republic of Korea, Malaysia, New Zealand, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. So with that, as they're trying to go through the 4 pillars, you just mentioned it, the 3 of them that supposedly there's some kind of an agreement on, supply chains, which I'm not sure what they're going into on that, but they've got it listed. Supply chains, clean energy, decarbonization, and infrastructure is the second one. Tax and anti-corruption. So that would be like, intellectual property rights type thing, preventing the knockoffs, things of that nature. But the number one key element or pillar in that is the trade. And so basically what's happening is there's no agreement on the trade. So at the end of this, they spend all their time on the secondary issues. The first one should be the key thing there is how to stimulate trade between all of these countries. And that's the thing that, again, you're looking at duty rates, or you're looking at things of as far as pricing and subsidies and all those kinds of things, and trying to work out, duty-free scenarios there and all that. So basically, all of these discussions have gone on, and up to this point, there's still no agreement. So, and again, to me, it appears, in my personal opinion, it appears that all the focus has been on somewhat of secondary issues rather than the main one. How can we stimulate trade? So that's the big hang up. And so there's still no agreement. If you go back a ways, and several weeks ago, we had, or maybe a few months ago, we had an article that talked about the Indo-Pacific discussions going on. And again, trying to work through these things and all that. But then they said they came together and put together a task force on port congestion and all that. And that is like, they made it sound like there was this great scenario here. We've got this task force on this, and it's the same group that are talking. So it's like, okay, great. What's that task force going to be? There was no details to it behind it at all. So the scenario, folks, is what this means is you have U.S. government and others talking. They have this workforce or task force that says, okay, there's a port congestion. What are you going to do? Talk to them, say, yeah, the Port of Long Beach is backed up, or Singapore is backed up, or whatever. Okay. They said nothing as far as what they would do with it. And if the port's congested, at that point, it's too late. You're congested. What are you going to do? So the same scenario here is there's been all these discussions and all this stuff that's going on, yet no agreement. So when you come down to it, it's like, unfortunately, I've been pretty critical. This particular administration seems to be talk, and nothing happens. So this is just one we have to sit back and watch.
For like years, maybe, but who knows? Hopefully we'll still be alive. But,
folks, they're moving about as fast as molasses going down a hill on a winter day. I mean, it's just not going. It's not getting there.
No winter day. I love that. You brought the holidays in. Okay. The last article, China's chip making equipment imports surged 93% despite curbs. This one actually confused me a little. So are there any risks or vulnerabilities associated with China relying heavily on imports for chip manufacturing equipment? Also, how does China manage to increase its imports of semiconductor manufacturing equipment by 93%? Like, I don't understand that when trade controls are imposed by the US and other allies.
China is gearing up to manufacture their own chips, is what that's saying, right? And they've gone on a major buying spree. So what's happening? They are circumventing the U.S. and their restrictions on some of this. All right, so how are they doing it and whatnot, even despite, the U.S. trying to refrain or trying to make it difficult for China to import those things. Let's go back. There's another related situation here, is that, remember, China has been pushing to replace the U.S. dollar as the currency for international exchange. So as they're trying to do that, and basically they're trying to replace it with the Chinese yuan and currency. So what that does is, if they don't use U.S. currency in trade deals, in exchange, and for transactions and buying and selling, then what that does is it circumvents not only the U.S. banking system, but the Western banking systems. And so now they're able to, buy from other countries using other currencies, and it circumvents any sanctions and circumvents any restrictions. And therefore, they're able to move forward. And, the U.S. is not the only one that has the chip making, equipment and things of that nature. Other countries are manufacturing it and whatnot. So they're moving forward despite these situations. That's one thing. The second thing is that a lot of trading partners and allies that the U.S. has had, the relationship has been somewhat damaged over the last 3 years, significantly. And as such, there are countries that are, I won't say cutting ties with the U.S., but they sure as heck are not. They could care less what our restrictions are, and they're moving forward. So as that is moving forward, that's how China is able to increase their capabilities in manufacturing chips. And in that, what's going to happen is that, again, U.S. can say with these advanced chips and everything else, oh, no, you shouldn't be selling to China, or you shouldn't be doing those things. They're doing it anyway, and they're working around the U.S. So they're circumventing what we've got going.
Also, China's not
What is
stupid,
weird is
maybe.
that, well,
no, they're not.
I think what happened is that didn't we? I'm trying to search my memory bank here, but I thought part of the reason was that we had an article, or we talked about it a few weeks back, on the restrictions are going to start December 1st, I think, for the equipment being shipped. Something about December 1st is coming to mind.
That was in the month. Yeah, you're talking about that. No, that was on China was putting restrictions on raw materials coming out of China to other things. So there were a lot of people that were wanting to buy up in the month of October. And I think it was November 1st is what I think, but it was like either in the month of October or month of November. And if it started December, it was trying to beat that restriction for licensing on some things.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I was trying to remember, maybe that's how the equipment, Anik, you asked, how can China be getting the equipment to have this 90% increase or surge? I mean, you're right. I mean, I was thinking that was a reason, but if that's not it, the article does say something about Taiwan actually supplying some of that equipment. And so, of course, China thinks Taiwan is part of China, and Taiwan says the whole world practically recognizes it as an independent nation. But of course, there's still that little gray area there, or big gray area, because I'm sure it's going to be something that we're going to be dealing with here shortly. But anyway, the thing is that they're getting a lot of that equipment is coming via Taiwan. Not that Taiwan makes the equipment, but they purchase it and it gets transferred to China. So yeah, so that's how they're circumventing. Or that's one of the ways they're circumventing it. So that's how the increase is coming, I guess. They're just.
And you bring up a good point. Here's something that also came out of. We had the meetings in San Francisco, where the Chinese president, the U.S. president have met along with several other countries. Yeah, well, and all that to say, here's one of the things that came out of that is. President Xi wound up making the statement that China, they're making the statement where China and U.S. military are going to be communicating again and opening up, if you will, communication channels where it had been cut off there for a while. There has been a few other things. I mean, there's some things, quite frankly, folks, that there's tensions between the two countries. I get that. But one of the things that was really paramount is the Chinese president made the statement that China will not be held back from taking over Taiwan. I personally, this is a Andy Shiles projection. I think that China is going to make a move within the next 12 months. Here's what my point is of taking away, whether it is or not. Folks, there are a lot of chips made in Taiwan that are supplied not only to the U.S., but other countries around the world. And so in the event, play that out. In the event that China makes a move on Taiwan, what do you think is going to happen? Well, there's going to be a lot of situations where you look at it and go, you know what? We need to cut trade relations initially with China, but then you also have Taiwan. So a lot of suppliers, that are in China and in Taiwan for your businesses, you better be looking at other sources, but secondarily to that, what would happen if those were just cut off without any notice? What's that going to do to your business? So that's your takeaway, that from a resiliency perspective in your companies, whether you're in the U.S. or any other place in the world, is that if you have suppliers in China and Taiwan, you know that if there's military action, that's going to put a strain on a lot of things, and it will severely affect your supply chain. So food for thought, some of the things in there, you might be looking at other sources, or at least develop a secondary source. So in the event that happens, you can get whatever your products are. But the chips are a big deal.
Yeah. And you said it, food for thought, because now we're going into some fun facts about food. About Thanksgiving.
I was gonna do a play on food. Go for it.
I know. I was like, I'll take that one. Thank you. And we did not rehearse this before. So first one, Americans will spend more than $1 billion on the 50 plus million turkeys over the Thanksgiving weekend, which most of the turkeys are frozen. And fun fact, they can be stored at 0 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 3 years. I don't know if that grosses anyone out, but hopefully not. They're still good. And then we have another one.
I know, it's keeping them fresh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. According to World Business, a Thanksgiving meal travels up to 2,500 miles getting from farm to table. And no, that's not the turkey itself. That's just, the trucks driving the turkeys, to the
Well, it's
table.
the turkeys, the vegetables, the liquor, if you will, that's consumed, wine and booze and whatever else. It's not the turkey
actually running. Juices
yeah.
Okay, well, those are my
this turkey is very lean.
Yeah, it ran 2,500 miles to get from farm to table. Anyway, so we hope that you have a very loving Thanksgiving and celebrate it with your families. And I'll be celebrating in London, so can't wait. I'm probably not going to celebrate, but we will cherish, what we have. So wishing everyone an awesome Thanksgiving, and be safe. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back next Monday. What? Go ahead.
Right. And I was just going to say a quick note on Thanksgiving Day. We have a special episode for our listeners. So we have a listeners listener show. I'm sorry. Yes, and it's just so everybody can tune into that. We have 4 people that come on there. It's great. It was a great recording. And lastly, Anik, don't forget to tell them about our free webinar.
Oh, yes, of course. Go sign up for a free webinar. I will be there. Renee will be there. Lala will be there maybe. I don't know. But me and Renee will be running it, which will be so exciting. And I think it'll be lots of fun. Renee shared with me, she has some interactive things, which no, you don't have to do crazy things. It's just getting to work with other professionals, getting to listen to what happened in 2023 and kind of gearing up for 2024, knowing what went on in 2023 and taking that knowledge to put it into a more successful upcoming year. So yeah, I'm very excited for that. So that is December 13th. So we hope to see you there, as well as being back next Monday on this show, obviously, as always. Other than that, I have nothing else to say, nothing else to share. Have a happy Thanksgiving and see you soon. Okay.
Hey, Anik, I wanted to also say I am so thankful for you and how you handle this show. You are fantastic.
Yay,
I've said that before. And you make Lalo and I look like $1 million. So
was it funny? Did I put some
so
funny things in here today? Thank you. That's very nice. This one was funny, huh? I don't know where I got all these jokes from today.
Well, happy Thanksgiving.
And thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you guys.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.